Yesterday, we told you about a new podcast that's coming to SuperTalk. That's True American Heroes. It's all about the stories of America's true heroes in their own words. And joining us today is the host of that, Jack Rutland. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Rebecca. How are you?
I am doing well. Congratulations on your show being turned into a podcast.
Well, I'm not sure what all that means, but I'm thrilled for the opportunity for folks to hear our veterans tell their stories.
Well, I think this is definitely a good thing and something worth listening to other than some of the other chatter that you may find on different wavelengths or channels. So this has been for a couple years now, The American Heroes, a show there at SuperTalk in Macomb, correct?
Brookhaven. That's
Brookhaven.
Correct.
Okay. So how long? Tell us a little history about the radio show.
Sure. Well, it goes back a little bit further. In 2013, we were going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Brookhaven Lincoln County Military Memorial Museum in the old depot in Brookhaven, and we were going to have a parade and have some speakers and recognize the veterans from all across this part of the state down here. And in conjunction with that, Robert Byrd, the manager at SuperTalk, said, well, what if we interviewed a few of these veterans leading up to this celebration we're going to have on Memorial Day? And that seemed like a good idea. And somehow or the other, they lassoed me into being the host. And I think we interviewed, it was either 5 or 6 veterans leading up to that parade, that Saturday parade and celebration of our veterans. And that was in 2013. It was the 10-year anniversary of the museum. Interesting enough, people wanted more and more. They enjoyed hearing the 5 or 6, I can't remember exactly how many, that we interviewed. And I even had people come up to me and say, I did not know that he was in World War II. I did not know he was in the Army and he was in Europe during the war. I didn't realize this about him. And like most vets, they don't like to pat themselves on the back. So a lot of folks didn't know these men had these types of experiences and were, in my opinion, true American heroes. And it just kind of took off. And since then, it's been COVID kind of threw us for a loop. And now we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 65 interviews, Rebecca.
That's incredible. How do you find your subjects to talk to? Are they all there in the Brookhaven or Lincoln County area, or have you expanded out now to some of the other counties within Mississippi or, I guess, nationwide?
Well, the guys that we interview, because we like to do it in the studio there at SuperTalk in Brookhaven, I would think probably the vast majority are local, not necessarily Lincoln County. I mean, we'll have them from Copiah County, we'll have them from Pike County, Lawrence County, over toward Meadville, back in the Franklin County area. We've had them from all across southwest Mississippi. And occasionally we'll, if somebody contacts the station or contacts me and says, look, I wish we could interview so-and-so. I bet he's got interesting stories. And a lot of times they really do. So we've done this now, like I said, since in earnest since 2013. We did hit a lull back during COVID where we didn't do hardly any, but now it's just as people will recommend someone to us, or we find out about somebody, and I'll see somebody in the grocery store wearing a veteran's hat, and I'll walk up to him and strike up a conversation, and I'll invite him to come on the program. Some of those we'll follow through, and we'll do a program and interview. Some don't. Quite honestly, and sadly, we don't have nearly as many World War II veterans as we did have. I've got 2 that I'm really trying to encourage them to come in for an interview, and both of them are almost 100 years old.
Wow.
But it's, I've interviewed every conflict that World War II to Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, and I'm just it's a wide range of interviews of veterans. I just did an interview week before last, actually, of a young man who's in the Special Forces. First person I had interviewed that was going to be a Green Beret. And it was very interesting talking with him about what all he's had to do and his training, and it's encouraging to hear young men with that kind of heart for America that are willing to serve. And it is a price that they pay when they serve. But it's been a wonderful adventure for me because I'm greatly honored and privileged to be able to be a part of it.
Well, it sounds like you have unlocked a few treasures there, at least that should be shared, right? And it obviously is such a gift to their family, but then it's a gift to the rest of us to recognize that, these men and women, they come back and they don't always just open up, especially if you don't ask. And then even, too, if family members ask, you kind of get just the surface level kind of answers. So, Jack, how do you sort of help your guest navigate what parts they want to share or versus not want to share when they come in? Do you do any kind of, background information or history on them before you get them in the studio for the American Heroes?
Sure. Usually just 2 or 3 basic questions. What conflict did you serve in, of course? What branch of the service were you in? What role did you play in that branch? Were you a mechanic? Were you a radio operator? Were you in special weapons? Or just exactly what did you do? And because I do have a little bit of a background, not necessarily being in the military, but grew up as a dependent of a man who served in World War II and 22 years in the Air Force, I was around veterans growing up. So I learned and love history, and I learned a lot of history from them. But when I talk to these gentlemen that I'm going to be interviewing, and it's not always gentlemen, there are ladies, when I do initially talk to them, and a lot of times it might be prior to them coming in, or sometimes it'll actually be when they get there, we'll talk for a few minutes in the studio because all of these are pre-recorded. And, it relaxes them. We talk about what they did. They might mention, I'll ask them, tell me what you did. Tell me some things that stand out in your memory. And they'll mention a couple of things, and I'll make a note of that. So when we start the interview, hopefully we've gotten a little bit of a relaxed atmosphere. And then as we talk, I just kind of talk about the things that they mentioned to me and things that I already knew or had studied about a little bit. And then as as we just go, it's just really interesting because I love being able. This is where I hate to say it, but I'm really fortunate. I get to see their faces.
Yeah.
And I get to look at their expressions. And Rebecca, I've heard them laugh about stories and things that they did, but I've also seen the tears, and I've seen them unable to talk about those difficult things that veterans sometimes have to go through as they defend our country.
These are definitely stories I feel like that we all should just be listening to, right? I mean, we should be listening to those that went before us, whether they served or not. I think in your family, this is just such a good reminder, Jack, that your grandparents aren't guaranteed to be here next holidays, or really, I know we're not all, but they're full of a wealth of this entire life that they lived prior to being, your grandparent or being whoever they were when you met them, your parents. And just getting to know, what were they like? What were your ups and downs? And sort of, what'd you walk through? And particularly, interesting whenever it's someone who chose the route of military service and then was placed in all of these different scenarios, without their choosing. Yes, they chose to enlist, but they didn't necessarily choose where they sort of ended up. And to see how that sort of impacted them in the long run and then also impacted our freedoms. I know that you got a few that are your favorite, Jack, so we're going to keep you around. We've got more with Jack Rutland. He is the host of SuperTalk's newest podcast, The American Heroes, which you can get wherever, true American Heroes, wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, we've got podcasts, and one of our newest podcasts is True American Heroes. It is hosted by our guest today, Jack Rutland. It has been a show there in SuperTalk Brookhaven for several years, but now we think everybody should have access. I believe everybody should have access to these conversations in a really easy-to-do format, which is in podcast form. You can get True American Heroes wherever you listen to podcasts. So, Jack, you guys are still doing new interviews. So is this still also a show there in Brookhaven? I don't want to freak anyone out that their show's being taken away from them. Is this just in addition to what you're already doing by uploading the previous shows into podcast form?
Yes, the program is every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock at Brookhaven on the live SuperTalk Southwest station, and it still has a lot of listeners. And yes, we are doing new interviews, and the whole purpose is not to glorify war or to make heroes out of these men, even though in my mind they are, and in the minds of Americans they should be. But these are men and women who were just citizens who, when the need was there, they volunteered or they were drafted and they chose to serve and be a part of whatever role it might have been to serve their country and to keep us free. I know what President Reagan said years ago. He said the way we honor our veterans is that we not forget them, that we always remember them. And this program, I hope, reminds people that they need to, when they see a veteran, they see someone with a hat on, say thank you for your service. Or if somebody you find out that you didn't know was a veteran, well then write them a note, send them a little note and say thank you for your service to your country. And I just pray that this podcast thing that we're doing now with SuperTalk for the program just gives an opportunity for more people to hear the stories that I've been fortunate to hear these last 10 years.
Well, I hope that it catches fire like it did there in Southwest Mississippi, and it opens the door for you to be able to, interview great heroes all across the state. I know you're limited. You like to be, and I get why you want to be in person. I can completely understand that with who you're talking to and see the face. But I just hope, because I feel like this is such a gift. Not only, again, I've mentioned it to their families for sure, but then also just to us. So, who are some of the coolest people you've met, and maybe some of the most memorable stories over the last couple of years there, Jack?
Oh, goodness, Rebecca. I knew you were going to ask that. That's the whole thing for me, because there's so many of them that are really, really outstanding. And I will say this, it's amazing how many people will come to me. I had a lady come to me and say, I loved my daddy and lived close to him my entire life. But she said, I heard stories on the program that he told that we had no idea. He has never told those stories to anyone else. So, yeah, it is a good way for people to remember what our veterans have done. I'll give you just a couple. I remember interviewing one just recently. Well, I say recently, in the last couple of years. He was in Iraq. It was during Enduring Freedom, and he was in the Army, and he was an infantryman, and he was on the ground, and they were in a combat zone, and he was the point for their squad just doing a reconnoiter, surveillance. They were just going through this little village, and he said, I peeped around the corner, and I looked. It was all clear. I took one step out, and all I saw was a flash. And he looked at me, and he said, the next thing I knew, I was waking up, and my corpsman, my medic, was kneeling beside me and shaking me to talk to him. And he said, I realized then that I had been shot, but my Kevlar vest had saved my life. And it had hit me directly in my chest, but the vest that he was wearing saved his life. And he was able to share that experience with us in the studio that day. And I think about a young man, well, he was a young man at that time, because it's interesting when I see these guys, especially the older ones, when they did the things they did and when they were telling me stories about their lives and their actions and what happened, they were in their 20s. I listened to one here recently where the young man was in the Navy, and he had enlisted when he was 17. And he was on the Yorktown in the Pacific and was talking about what it was like to serve in the Navy. Mr. Tom Britt, a gentleman that I went to church with who's no longer with us, talked about being in Korea, where he was able to. Their position was overrun by the North Koreans, and they were all falling back. And one of his buddies close to him was wounded and unable to walk, and his sergeant was telling him to get out of there, and he went back and picked up his buddy and threw him over his shoulder and walked almost 2 miles to get him to safety. Now, his sergeant chewed him out, but later he received the Bronze Star for bravery for rescuing his friend. I remember a dear man that I went to church with who was in England during World War II, and he was a mechanic. You know, not real glamorous, but so important because he was a mechanic on a B-17. And every night, he said, we stayed up all night working on the planes that would fly the next day, and then we'd sit and hold our breaths for the next 8 to 10 hours waiting for them to come back from their mission that day. And those are the kind of stories that it's just men. I listened to one not too long ago, a young man who was over there and who was actually landed on the beaches on June 6th. And he was talking about how terrible it was, and the noise was so bad, and the smoke was so bad, and they were all sick from being on the ships for a couple of days anyway, and the water was so rough. He just shared what was going through his mind. And hearing these personal stories from these guys, and many times may not have told them to anybody for the last 40 years or 50 years or however long, but to hear them share their stories, these I'm hoping these podcasts will help people to realize we have a lot to be thankful for in our country, and we have a lot of people to be grateful to, and that's our veterans. We need to be constantly thanking them. And please don't forget the men who are serving today, the ones who are wearing the uniform, the ones who are willing to go whenever they're asked to go. We just need to be thanking them and thank the ones who did serve in days gone by in Vietnam. Don't forget our Vietnam vets. If you see a hat on a man that says Vietnam veteran, please thank him. I had a conversation with a Vietnam vet in the parking lot of Walmart a while back, and I told him, thank you for your service. And I said, you probably didn't get a lot of that when you came home. He said, I got none. He said, no one said thank you. But he said, it's different today. So that encouraged me, and I just want to encourage our listeners, Rebecca, we just need to be thanking our vets and then assure them we're not going to forget what they've done for our country.
It's something so easy to do. I mean, Jack, obviously if they're wearing the hat or the shirt or whatever it may be, they're obviously proud of it themselves. They're putting it out there. And so it's so simple just to say, even if you don't complete sentence, just to smile at them and give them a nod or a little bit of a wave or a head tilt. They usually know exactly what you're trying, to relay. If you get the opportunity to extend that extra, thank you for your service. It does. And it makes you feel good. So Jack, over all of these interviews, how has this impacted you being the host of True American Heroes?
Oh, goodness. It's a great, great honor. I feel so humble doing this. I talk to some of them, and there's so much humility. They don't even really like when you ask them questions. And if I would ask someone about, did you get a medal for that or anything like? They don't. Even now, maybe 30 or 40 years after it actually happened, they don't want to talk about it. I'm so grateful that I've seen, and then I know the World War II vets are called the greatest generation, but we also need to remember that anybody that served, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be recognized as being great in the eyes of the rest of our country. We need to say thank you to them. We need to promise them we're not going to forget. We know what they went through. To some extent, we never know exactly what they went through. I interviewed a guy that I remember him talking. They were on the beach. They had just landed. They were under fire. They were being shelled, and he was with two other buddies. There was three of them. And he said next thing he remembered, there was an explosion, and he woke up laying flat on his back, and both of his buddies were gone. They had died. He didn't. he came home and was able to tell that story about his two buddies. So
and now we can keep those stories alive, Jack, by listening and subscribing to your new podcast, True American Heroes, available on the SuperTalk Mississippi app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You drop new episodes on Tuesday, still there in Southwest Mississippi. Jack, I appreciate your time and what you're doing, and thank you for your service.
Oh, I'm just facilitating. I love what I do, and I'm still looking for more interviews. If anybody wants to be a part of it, just call the SuperTalk station in Brookhaven, and just tell them that you've got someone they'd like Jack to contact, and I'll do it.
All righty, you guys stick with this. We got more good for you coming up next.